Today we are finishing with the 6th chapter of the Gospel of St. John. Through several Sundays, we have read this long chapter that is called the chapter of the bread of life, because Jesus Christ is talking about the bread of life several times. So I'm going to remember a little bit about the last Sundays to understand the end of this chapter that we have listened today. So he begins to speak about the bread of life, and he says that whoever eats the bread of life will have no hunger again. And they say, we want to eat this bread. And then he continues explaining the meaning of the bread of life. And then he says that this bread of life is his own body. So people are saying, I don't understand that very well. So he continues explaining that, and he explains that the bread of life is his flesh and his blood. And he says that whoever eats his flesh and drink his blood will have eternal life and will be resurrected in the last day. So when they were listening to that, they finally get to the point where we have listened today, where they say, this saying is hard. Who can accept it? So we have to put ourselves over there, like 2,000 years ago in that place, listening to the words of Jesus and trying to understand what the people were thinking and why they were saying that. This is important. So I would like to explain two things that come from this expression of these people who were saying, this saying is hard, who can accept it? So one thing that we can learn from this answer is that following Christ, being Christian, is not something superficial, but something that is rooted in our heart, something that has to do with what we were, what we are, what we will be. It has to do with what we had, it has to do with what we have now, and it has to do with what we will have in the future. Being Christian is something that comes from the toe till the head. Our body, our soul, everything. So being Christian is not something that is called to be superficial, but something that is called to be very deep in us, the whole of us. However, something that I found in my home country, in Spain, and something that I also find here in Japan, is that sometimes religion, being Christian, being Buddhist, being Shintoist, is something superficial. It's something that only touches the surface of ourselves. For example, I remember that the 1st of January, I went with the parish priest of this church to a very famous Shintoist temple here in Osaka called Tenmangu. And here in Japan, the 1st of January, they have this tradition of going to the Shintoist temple in order to pray. So there was a very, very, very long queue. Actually, we were not able to enter because we didn't want to wait for so long over there. But there were many, many, many people waiting for getting into the temple, offering the money, clapping the hands, bowing, and making a petition to God. But sometimes what happens is that someone who is Shintoist goes to the temple on the 1st of January, and the next time he goes to the temple will be probably the next year on the 1st of January. So during the year, he's Shintoist, but this is something that has no impact in his daily life, has no relation with his daily life. This can happen also with Buddhists, and this can also happen to Christians as well. I mean, we can come to the Mass on Sunday, but it can be something that gets to the surface of ourselves, because we come on Sunday to the Mass, and then the rest of the week, what we have listened here, what we experience here, has nothing to do with our daily life. So being Christian is something that remains on the surface. I go to the Mass on Sunday, but if I have a better plan, then I don't go to the Mass on Sunday. So it is something that remains on the surface, and it doesn't go into the deep of our hearts. But as I said, being Christian is something that is called to be rooted in our heart. It's something that implies our body, our soul, everything. For example, I am studying Japanese right now, and I go to the Japanese school from Monday till Friday. And on Friday, last Friday, we had to talk about something in small groups. And after that, some of us will have to share that. And the question was, when you have to make decisions in your life, what is the most important thing that you take into account when you have to take an important decision? Most of my classmates have 20 years old or something like this. And they were saying, well, this question is very difficult, it's very difficult. And I was saying, well, this is very difficult, but the sooner you answer that, the better it will be. Because when we're very young, we don't tend to think about those things, but it is very important. When you have to make an important decision in your life, which is the most important thing that you take into account to make a decision? And then we were talking within small groups. And after that, the teacher chose someone from the class to say to the rest of the classmates. And I was one of the chosen ones. And I had to explain in front of my class my answer. And, except one of my classmates who is baptized and is also a priest, a Catholic priest, the rest are not baptized, and they have a very, very, very poor knowledge about Christianism. So I said, well, I know that God loves me, and He loves me with an infinite love. And every day I have a conversation with Him through prayer. It is a conversation that deals about love. And in that conversation that I have with God, God is also telling me things about my future. So for me, the most important thing as a Christian to make a decision in my life is to be able to answer the question that I make to God, saying, what do you want from me, God? What do you want from me? And then I said, and because I had this conversation with God, and then in this conversation, God was calling me to be a priest, I am a priest. And I decided to become a priest because he called me and I answered to that call. And because I had this loving conversation with God, talking about the future, I am here in Japan as a missionary because he was calling me to become a missionary and to leave my homeland and to come here. So that is a way of showing that being Christian is not something that lies on the surface, but something that has to do with the whole of ourselves, with everything that we were, that we are, and we will be. And it has to do with our daily life, of course. It's called to do with that. So this is the first thing that I wanted to share with you today from that words that we were listening to, that being Christian is not something that lies on the surface, but something that is rooted on our hearts and that has to do with our daily life. And the second thing that I would like to share with you is that from these words, this saying is hard, who can accept it? Well, what happened when they said that? In front of Jesus Christ, there were thousands of people. If we remember the beginning of the 6th chapter, it is written over there. There were thousands of people following Jesus. Thousands of people were listening to Jesus. And when they listen to this, you have to eat my flesh, you have to drink my blood, then they said that, and most of the people left. Most of the people stopped following Christ because they didn't understand. They didn't understand what he was saying. And it was not only that they didn't understand what they were saying, is that they thought that the words that he was saying were bad words. Well, you can imagine what they were thinking. You have to eat my flesh. You have to drink my blood. Well, they were thinking, well, he's inviting us to become, I don't know if in English the word is cannibal. So someone who eats human flesh. So he's telling us to become cannibals. So this is very bad, very bad. We leave him. So most of the people left Jesus Christ. Just a few people remain there. And those people were mainly the apostles. And then St. Peter gives an answer, because Jesus Christ says to them, also, do you want to leave me? And then St. Peter answers Jesus Christ and says, where are we going to go if you are the only one who has words of eternal life? Well, from those words we learn also that sometimes in our Christian life there are things that we don't understand. Sometimes many things, sometimes just a few. But for sure, in our daily life, as we go through life, we encounter times when we don't understand. And sometimes it's not only that we don't understand what God is telling us, but also that we think the opposite, the other way around. So when that happens, there are a few options that we can have. One of the options is what happened that time, that many of the people left Jesus Christ. Well, I don't understand what Jesus is saying. I don't understand what the body of Christ, who is the church, is saying. And I think that it is a bad thing. So I leave Jesus Christ. I leave the church. I leave the body of Christ. So that's one option. Another option is like to say, well, I don't understand what Jesus is saying. I don't understand what the church is saying. I don't understand what the body of Christ is saying. And I think the opposite. But I remain on the church, but I keep on my thinking. I keep on thinking the opposite, and I keep on doing the opposite. But I keep on the church. So this is also a bad option, because although with the body we remain on the church, with the heart we are leaving the church, we're leaving the body of Christ, we're leaving Jesus Christ. And also we have the option of Saint Peter. Well, I don't understand, and I think the opposite, but I remain and I try to understand. And I make an effort, a humble effort, to understand what I am probably misunderstanding. And I remain on the body of Christ. I remain on the church. I remain on Jesus Christ with my body and with my heart. And probably in the future, I will understand. I will give you an example about that. Some years ago, when I was living in Spain, a woman from my family was talking to me. We had a discussion. She was in her 30s, and she wanted to get married, and she wanted to have children. She wanted to become a mother, but she didn't have a boyfriend. And she was 30-something. She was growing, she was approaching the 40s. So she told me, she said to me this sentence. She said to me, I have the right to be a mother. I have the right to be a mother. What she wanted to say with that sentence was this thing. She was saying, well, now I am 30-something, I don't have a boyfriend, but if I get to my 40s and I still don't have a boyfriend, I'm still not married, then I will go to a clinic and I will go to artificial methods to become pregnant and to become a mother. She was saying that. And then I tried to explain to her, well, the key thing, that being a mother is not a right. Being a mother is a gift that we can receive or we cannot receive. But being a mother is not a right, it's a gift. She didn't understand. She didn't accept it, all the arguments that I was telling her. So then I tried with love and with patience to explain to her that these artificial methods to become a mother does not respect the dignity of a human being. She didn't understand. She didn't accept that. And I tried to explain that in an easy way, with a lot of love. But what I found is that no matter what I can say, that she was not going to understand none of my words, none of my arguments, and she was not going to accept what I was telling her, because she wanted to be a mother, and that was all. It doesn't matter the way to become a mother, but she wanted to become a mother, and that was all. So the thing is that now she's married, and she had 2 daughters. So what I thought is that now I can talk to her again about the same things as I was talking a few years ago. And probably now she will be more able to understand and to recognize the truth within the words and the arguments that I was trying to explain to her before. Because before, she was not prepared to receive these arguments and to receive this. She didn't understand. She didn't want to understand. But now, probably, she is able to understand. So this is an example to show that sometimes in our Christian life, there are things that we don't understand. And sometimes we don't understand and we think the opposite. But when that happens in our Christian life, we have the option of Saint Peter to remain within the body of Christ, to remain in the church, to trust in the body of Christ, to trust in Jesus Christ, to trust in the church, and to try to understand slowly, little by little, those things that we don't understand. And probably it will happen the same as happened to Saint Peter. He didn't understand what Jesus Christ was saying about eating his flesh, drinking his blood, but he remained within the body of Christ. He remained in the church. He remained with Jesus Christ. And slowly, little by little, he understood that the meaning of the words from Jesus Christ, the meaning of this bread of life, has to do with the sacrament of the Eucharist. What Jesus Christ was saying was not to become a cannibal, but what he was teaching us was the way to be able to be in communion with God, the way to be able to take part on the body of Christ, to take part on the church, to take part in God. And Saint Peter understood that very well because he celebrated the Mass many times. He was a priest, he was one of the apostles, and he celebrated the Mass many times. And he also understood very well that being Christian is not something that remains on the surface, but something that is deep on our hearts, because he finally died on a cross also because of being a Christian. So we give thanks to God for this word from him that make us understand that being Christian is something that has to do with all our life, with all that we are. And also we ask God to help us to remain within the body of Christ, especially when we don't understand things. And we also ask God to help us, to give us the light to understand those things that we don't understand right now.